Hey everyone, this is a follow-up video to one we did a few days ago on the announcement of this film here. Harman Photo Phoenix, sorry, is a colour film, a colour negative film, an ISO 200 colour negative film, which is big news because Harman Photo is the new brand from Harman Technologies. Now you'll know them as the makers of Ilford and Kentmere branded black and white films, and they've been one of the leading manufacturers of black and white film in the world for decades and decades since World War II. Although the company itself has been going for more than 120 years. And black and white films is really what they've concentrated on, certainly over the past few decades. Way back when, they used to sell Ilford branded colour films, but they were actually made by other companies, usually Agfa in Germany. Agfa, which used to make all sorts of films, colour films, black and white films, colour slide films. So although you could buy these sort of colour Ilford films, they weren't actually made by the people who make the Ilford black and white films. So Harman Phoenix is actually made in the same factory near Liverpool, Moberley in Cheshire, that makes the Ilford black and white films. Same factory that makes the wonderful HP5 film that a lot of people use. A few months ago, selected bloggers, camera shop owners, film sellers got some of these coming soon postcards from Harman with news that there was a new brand. And it turned out when this package arrived with these 2 rolls of Phoenix film, that Harman had actually manufactured a colour film. Now, when I say manufactured, it wasn't an existing emulsion from somebody else, like an old Agfa recipe or Farania. This is big news for colour film shooters because there's been a few problems over the last few years, especially over the COVID lockdowns and the sort of downturn in the world economy during that period. It was actually really hard to get hold of colour films sometimes, even in a place like London, which has many thousands of film shooters. If you were trying to get something like this, the Kodak Gold colour negative film, it was just often months before you could find it, because there was a real upsurge in interest in film photography around this time, and especially colour film photography. And it meant that more and more people wanted to buy film. At the same time, as we'll know, there are a lot of logistical problems. Film needs silver, it needs gelatin, you need the cardboard for the packaging, you need various metals for the canisters. And in the case of Kodak in the US, they were having real problems keeping up with the demand. And really, over the past couple of decades, since the advent of digital photography, there haven't been a lot of players in colour film manufacture. So, Agfa, which was one of the big European film producers, they kind of went bankrupt in 2005. There are sort of various bits of their old empire still going, but they're run by various other companies, and they don't manufacture film, certainly colour film, anymore. Another big player was Farania, which made lots of really good colour films. They sort of concentrated on the consumer market, and a lot of the films branded for photo chains or pharmacy chains, like this Lloyd's pharmacy film, they will have been made by Farania as well. They disappeared in 2008, and although there's a sort of attempt to get them back into colour film manufacturing after a Kickstarter in 2013, it's pretty slow going. They'll probably get there, but it's going to take a lot longer than I think the investors and the people behind it envisaged. So long story short, it's just meant that there's not really been many people in the colour film producing market, apart from Kodak, which we know has had problems, and Fujifilm. As to whether Fujifilm is continuing to make a lot of their colour films, it's anyone's guess, really. Like a lot of Japanese companies, they tend to keep information, pretty close to home. But there's been various things recently, like people seeing that the data sheets for some of their colour negative films look exactly like the data sheets that Kodak produces for their own. The films are made in the USA, so are they just rebranding certain Kodak colour films? Who knows? Harman Photo isn't the only new player in recent times. Adox, which is a German brand best known for their papers, developers, and black and white films, they released a film a couple of years ago called Color Mission, which is a 200 speed film. It sort of feels quite like this old Agfa Vista 200 film in its look. That Agfa look is something that I'm quite a fan of. I really liked the Vista films when I used to shoot them a lot in the 2000s. But Adox is quite a small player, so they're not able to produce Color Mission, or certainly not been able to produce it yet, sort of consistently. And it feels like a film that is maybe a work in progress. Worth checking out if you can find it, because it produces this really nice colour palette. We've also got the original Wolfen films, which are made by a Novuscoat. That's a factory in Germany that has made films for other people, like the colour films for Lomography, Metropolis, and such like. That's part of the Orwo family of companies, which have sort of come under recent new ownership. It feels like there's a good opportunity for a film producer to fill at least part of that gap with a new product, especially if they can produce a film that doesn't cost 15, 18, 20 pounds a roll. So Phoenix, from what I've seen on the literature that Harman Technology has put out so far, it feels like this film will be about £12 a roll here in the UK, which is not too bad for a new colour product. And I think they've been quite honest about what the film looks like, the fact that they really are in the first stages of this colour film production. So it's not a final product by any sense, but looking at the pictures that they sent out when they were talking to me before the release was made public, I think that they might be onto a winner with this early incarnation of the film, because it really reminds me of some of the looks of cross-process slide films that became such a craze in the 90s and 2000s, especially with the Lomography crowd. Works really well in bright light conditions, bright summer days. That's a kind of film that people are really missing, because the best slide films to cross-process died out with Agfa and the big cull of certain Kodak films over a decade ago. So it's nice to have something with that look to it available again. Some people might think that it's a bit too contrasty, a bit too colourful, but I'm pretty impressed with the results I've seen so far. Harman have said that one of the things to bear in mind with this film is you should get it processed and scanned by the lab rather than doing it yourself. Now that's because when you scan at sort of higher resolution, you're losing some of that contrasty cross-process look colours, according to what they told me. So it feels like a nice film to sort of shoot for those off-the-cuff moments. Load in a camera like a Lomo LCA or an Olympus XA2 and just, have fun shooting it like you would all those expired colour films that give such interesting results. So this is the only film that Harman have announced, the only new colour film that Harman have announced. But it feels like this might be the start of something a bit more ambitious. If Harman Phoenix does well, then that means more revenue which can be put into research and development for other colour films. And I just know from conversations I've had with people who produce film, I mean, it's expensive enough to develop a completely new black and white emulsion. We're talking, you know, perhaps £200,000 here in the UK just to get the first iteration test rolls of a black and white film. Colour film is much more than that, maybe 10 times more, at least 10 times more. I mean, I've seen figures of $5 million that Kodak spent making sure that they could bring Ektachrome back in 2017. And that's because, you know, colour film is just so much more complicated. You're dealing with all sorts of different chemicals to get the colour dyes. It's a much more complicated process. So the fact that Harman have decided to do this, I think, is quite brave, but it probably makes sense because, you know, the colour film market has sort of been buckling under the strain of this new interest in it, this new community of photographers who want to shoot colour film rather than shooting colour pictures on their phone or digital cameras. And, you know, 2 decades into what's been at times gradual and at times quite sudden shrinking of film production and the film market, you know, any new films are good news, but new colour films, I mean, I think that's a real shot in the arm for film in the 2020s. And, you know, it's not a bad thing for Kodak, as great as their films are, to have a bit more competition in this market. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you have a moment, and hope to see you soon.